could clearly see the children from the video footage. And so it was acknowledged, I think, by the pilots and the people that were overseeing the action. And then they put the guy in the van, and as the van drove away, they unleashed the 30mm cannon on the van. And I think what it did was it really just highlighted how savage those, the technology, what the technology can do now, the war technology, the savagery of it, the murderous nature of it. And it just sort of, the governments go to great lengths to spin doctor and do PR on their things that they decide to do. And then every now and then somebody comes along and says, this is actually what's going on. This is what it really looks like. And that must be extremely annoying for senior people in the government and the Pentagon and the military. Even senior people in the companies that manufacture the helicopters start to become, what fascinates me is how far removed that it is from the actual truth. And so if you listen to the American military talking about their, the American government talking about the justifications for that second war in Iraq, and then you go and look at those images, it starts to shine things up. And that's what Julian Assange has been really good at. He's just found a way of basically uncovering the lies, and he's made a lot of enemies, and he's made some very powerful enemies, and now he's paying the price for that,
Yeah, and that's too bad because, media is meant to hold governments accountable, and they're not able to do that. And Julian is being made an example for others that want to hold the government accountable. I mean, don't you think that's just horrific for everybody? I mean, in every way. I mean,
well, and look, the media was, back in the early days, there was a concept of the news as being a public service, that the governments, as part of their contract with the public, they take money in taxes and they'd spend it wisely. And one of the things that they spent the money on was that they provided an honest journalistic service in order that people could understand what was going on, because in democratic systems, people need to be informed so that they can make the right choices. But it's now degenerated into profit centers. And it's degenerated into a situation where, for example, if you want to get a news story out, then you pay the media channel for them to run your story. And so the idea of the stories having merit for public benefit, public interest, there's not so many news outlets that really use that model anymore. It's there's all profit driven.
yeah.
And it's also part of establishment. It's part of the way that there is a view of how the world should work by powerful and influential people, which works for them, and they just get on with it and don't think too much about it. They just follow the rules. But it's not working for the public. So the way that climate change, for example, is an existential threat to human existence, and yet doesn't even get a mention. That's just an example, and I think that's what Julian Assange set out to change. That's what the Extinction Rebellion is trying to set out to change. One of their demands is that the government start telling the truth.
Yes, and that's why I think they're connected. Julian Assange and Extinction Rebellion, I think they're highly connected that way. And I was hoping that Extinction Rebellion would come out in support of Julian Assange as part of their protests. What are you thinking about that?
I think that Extinction Rebellion is very, very focused, and so I don't think you're going to see that sort of cross advocacy. In Australia, I've attended a few public protests. I was at one a few weeks ago. Actually, it was a school strike. There was 10,000 school kids and adults gathered in a park in the city, and then we all marched down to the state government building, which is about 1 kilometre away. And I tell you, that was a really, really exuberant experience. It was really the energy and the buzz and the vibe was fantastic. But as we were walking down, one of the chants was always was, always will be Aboriginal land, which is basically bringing Aboriginal rights issues into this climate march. And there was also a lot of pro-refugee activists there as well. And what you ended up with was a whole mishmash of social activism that was primarily coordinated through this youth climate alliance. And what I thought about that was, yeah, it's great because there's all these issues and isn't it good to see people passionate about defending them? But it lost the political message because one of the comments I overheard as we all started to march was, what's this all about? I thought this was about climate change. I didn't know this was about Aboriginal activism or Aboriginal rights. And so I think these are all these things need to be aired, but I think that there is a discipline that the Extinction Rebellion has, which is very, very focused, and that is to
it is. But the thing that I think that Extinction Rebellion and Julian Assange have, where they are like intertwined, is the government telling the truth. And so if the government can't be held accountable by the media, people like Julian Assange, then they're just going to keep lying to us. If Julian Assange is persecuted and done away with, it's just putting out an example for all other media not to tell the truth.
Yeah, because, and look, it's scary, and like we're saying, is that the public, when they're organized, have got more power than the elite. That's a standard sort of rule because there's so many more of the public. But generally, they're not organized, and part of the reason they're not organized is because they're misinformed about what's important. I did as part of my master's degree, which I'm sort of coming to the end of now, a Master of Business. I did a unit in media strategy, for which I got a high distinction. But one of the things in that unit that I learned, or one of the things that was said, was that the media doesn't tell you what to think; it tells you what to think about.
Right.
So, so it doesn't sort of force you to think one thing or the other about climate change. It just gets you to think about that Notre Dame burnt down, or that some sports star had a car crash. As though these are the things that you ought to be concentrating on, and everything else by default is just obviously of less importance. And so that's part of how it works. And so having the media tell the truth, which is the Extinction Rebellion demand, really means that they actually just start talking about it.
The government and the media tell the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But then persecuting a journalist, someone who publishes the truth, is exactly opposite of what they're trying to accomplish. So I would think that they would support someone like Julian Assange.
Well, I'm sure they support him in principle, but whether they would I mean, they've got a 2-week action going on right now.
Yeah.
And what happens after the 2 weeks? I mean, what is really exciting about the Extinction Rebellion is that you can sort of talk about this thing conceptually. And I've watched all of the Roger Hallam interviews that I could find to really understand what they're trying to do. But like Roger Hallam and the other two founders could quite easily get arrested in the middle of the night and pretty much disappear for some length of time. But they've actually created something which is just going, it's everywhere. I was just looking at my Facebook feed today. There's Extinction Rebellion activists have put a big banner out across one of the busiest highways in the city. They haven't gone into the street to actually block roads. There's that level of organisation. I don't think it's here in Brisbane yet. That's going on in Melbourne. They're doing some road blocking. But what's happening in London is really the capital of the revolution. So what happens there is
that's inspiring, don't you think? What they're doing in London.
Oh, it's just so clever. I mean, I watched an interview with Roger Hallam the other day. He got invited to speak at Oxfam and an event for Oxfam or one of the other big NGOs. And he got up and he stood up and he said, "I've written this down because it's really emotional." And he says. And he swore. He said, "I'm fucked off." He says, because you failed. Greenpeace failed. World Wildlife Fund failed. All of these environmental groups have failed. And I don't mean that to denigrate them. I mean that to say that the planet is still dying. And so whatever it was that they set out to do, they haven't been able to achieve it. And so it's
Right.
got late hour where every day that goes by without this swerve, where we start to euthanize the fossil fuel industry, to use an expression.
Mm-hmm.
Day that goes by that we haven't started that process is another day that we're heading towards the collapse of the global ecosystem. I mean, that's what it's all about. And it's that simple, and it really is that simple, except that actually doing the thing that we need to do is extremely difficult, and it's difficult conceptually. I mean, what's involved in actually turning, for example, turning Australia around to decarbonize the network and pull carbon out of the atmosphere. It requires brave governments, and governments typically aren't brave. They are well, typically they take the easy route, and the easy route is to that tomorrow is going to be pretty much identical to today, and they retard change. So in Australia, we've got great sunshine over here. We've got really good sunshine. We've got good wind, and the actual transition to renewable energy would have been a great deal further along had the government not been running interference. The government is running interference on the removal of the fossil fuel industry from this country. And why are they doing that? They're doing that because of the vested interests of the corporations and the powerful, influential people. And so telling the truth it's not just about telling the truth. It's about creating the space and the infrastructure and the funding and the institutions to transition economies away from fossil fuels. Fossil fuels have done us a great thing, but they are overstayed their welcome. Now they've got to go. That's the truth of the matter.
That's the hard part, though. Getting off of fossil fuels is going to be really, really hard. For so many reasons. I mean, we use it for everything. We use it for harvesting crops. We use it for planting crops. We use it for transporting goods. We use it for heat and cooling. We use it for so many things. And I don't think people are ready to give up any of that. And I don't think that we have an energy source ready to step into that. I know there's a lot of people pushing for nuclear energy, which really scares the hell out of me. I live in Utah. We store the spent nuclear waste here in Utah. And I just, we already have 450 nuclear plants that need to be decommissioned, and it takes a long time to get them secure and decommissioned, or that is a huge issue with an extreme weather event. You know what I mean? What do you think about that? I mean,
look, we could talk. If you leave nuclear aside for one moment, because that's a whole different can of worms. But if you just look at getting rid of, in the first instance, coal, in the second instance, oil, and then gas. Technologically, it's not a problem anymore. We've got, like in Australia, it is cheaper to build a new solar plant than to keep old coal plants running. And the reason why the coal industry hasn't sort of pretty much collapsed is because they've been propped up. It's because the governments are retarding the transition, and this transition, that's energy transition that started already, is in many respects just like other energy transitions. It's a natural process in an economy when there's better, cheaper technology. The solar panels, the price of the solar panels have come down to such ridiculously low levels now, and the balance of systems, and so the inverters and the cables and the racks and the trackers and all the rest of that stuff, the price of that is so low. Wind turbine technology, the prices are so low. And there's a whole bunch of other technologies. So one of my websites that I maintain, in fact, I might even, I can share this. I'll share the screen, so I'll just show you this. So one of my consulting arm is called CO2, SEAO2. And what I've got on the back of the CO2 website, hang on, I'll just go and share this. Stand by.
I don't think you can, Guy. I don't think you can. I'm already sharing it.
Oh, okay. So let's
sorry.
let that go. But anyway, one of the things I do on that website is I list a whole bunch of different technologies. So I focus on, for example, renewable energy technology that makes electricity from ocean currents, of which there are dozens. Renewable energy.
Any link you would like to share, please email me and I will add it to the information on the video.
So there are technologies for making electricity from ocean waves, from marine currents. There's a whole bunch of stuff, right?
Have they done any research as far as how that would affect ocean life? I mean, we already have our ocean dying.
That comes in with the environmental impact assessments of the installations. But I don't know if there are any large. There are a number of demonstration projects around the world. Some of these things. There was one called the Oyster a few years ago, which was it's colossal. I can't share the screen. Is that what you're saying?
No, not right now. Not while I'm sharing. I wish I could switch it. You could put a link in the chat. Put a link in the chat, and then I will try and get it in on the other screen.
Okay, so I want to bring up a couple of I want to show you this because not many people know about this stuff, and I do, and that's part of what I do is I share these things. But I'm just going to figure out. Well, I'll show you the Palamas wave converter. So this is one of the technologies that was under development. I'm going to send this link. Stand by and put that in the chat.
Yeah, if you put it in the Zoom chat, I will be able to bring it up. There you go.
Okay, so I've just gone to the Google Images. There you go. Okay, so this is a device that sits in the ocean. It's like a big long snake. In fact, the word Palamas means snake. And as the ocean runs past it, it's got like sections, and in between the sections, it's got these hydraulic pumps, and basically it pumps fluid around, which drives a generator, which creates electricity. And you put this thing in the ocean, and it generates electricity. Okay, so now that thing had been under development for years. Very expensive. They're very big. It's very costly to build the demonstrators and then rebuild them. Technological development. And so the last I heard of this is that the company that was behind it went under. So part of the reason why that technology failed was because there was no supporting infrastructure. There was no, for example, carbon tax, which would have made that technology, given it an edge. I'll show you one more. And so there's lots of these, right? So the Oyster was one of my favorites. Oyster wave converter. Yeah, okay, that picture there. Sorry.
Okay.
Go here.
Put it in the Zoom chat again. There you go.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, I think we got it.
Okay, so the picture I want you to look at is the one. Where is it? In the.
Let me find it. Which picture do you want to put?
Yeah, so the one where you can see it, it's in that big warehouse. That's like the 1, 2, 3, 4 from the left. And look at, can you see the size of the thing in relation to the little people in there?
Yeah, I'm having trouble with this. Let me see if I can get it on another screen. Hold on one second.
So this device, it sits on the seafloor. And let me just go and find the CO2 page, because that's where all of the that's CO2 slash. So anyway, what I'm saying is that there are hundreds of technologies that are basically standing by, ready to go to power the world. But at the moment, there's no infrastructure for them. There's nothing to protect them against the pressures of the marketplace. So we can power this whole planet with renewables. But
has there been any research as far as what it would take to extract the raw materials to build these?
Okay, so that comes under the concept of embedded energy, or energy return on energy investment, EREOI, and it's a very, very important point that you raised. And so EREOI, energy return on energy investment, is this concept that says how much energy have you got to put into building your renewable energy technology. And you have this concept called the carbon payback, which is basically For example, if you go and build solar panels, you've got to put energy into building the solar panels. You've got to mine the aluminium and the glass and the silicon.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about the biosphere, that it's going to destroy mining those issues.
Yeah, so it's a good point, because in a way what we've got to do is we've got to repower the whole planet, which means we've got to build a whole load of stuff, and there's an environmental footprint to building all of that stuff. And so it's really important that what we're focused on is the renewable energy technologies that have got the lowest environmental footprint in order to generate the energy. So, for example, if my understanding is correct, of solar PV, so the solar shiny solar panels that go on the roof and in the solar farms, it takes about, I think, 9 months to 12 months of running a solar panel for it to generate as much energy as was used to produce the solar panels. And so one of the problems that we're facing now is that if we want to roll out all of this solar, renewable energy technology, because the whole system is predominantly powered by fossil fuels, we've got to consume a ton of fossil fuels to make the solar panels and the wind turbines. And so that's another part.
And then maintenance and upkeep and all that as well. And transportation from where you produce or extract the raw materials to where you build them, and then to where you place them. There's a lot of things that people aren't considering when it comes to these renewable energy sources. That's really highly concerning to me, because I'm more concerned about nature and the environment, because really, honestly, humans do depend on that and our biodiversity. So
well, yeah, that's true. And look, this is why the transition to sustainability is so complicated, and if it gets when it gets underway, it has to get underway. It's inevitable that it will get underway at some point. A proper transition to an ecologically sustainable global economy. If it doesn't happen, we're all gonna perish, and we're gonna take down most of the species on the planet with us. So let's assume that something happens. For example, Extinction Rebellion kicks something off, and this goes underway. We've got a whole bunch of institutions that can be helpful. So, for example, we've got an institution called IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency. Let me bring up a link to that so I can throw it up there. The United Nations, all of the United Nations, UNFCCC, we've got all the institutions, but what we haven't got at the moment is we don't have governments demanding or putting in the support to actually have these institutions do something valuable. So we've got the UNFCCC that created the Paris Agreement. That's the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
That nobody is even coming close to meeting the agreements they made at the Paris Climate.
So the Paris Climate Agreement is itself not a good agreement, because it doesn't go far enough, and not many of the governments are actually taking it seriously anyway. Okay, but look at it this way. If the government suddenly decided to start getting serious, then they've got all of that infrastructure in place to start making global decisions about how to actually proceed forward with turning off the fossil fuel generators. What's missing is that the governments are laggards on this, because the governments aren't paying attention to the interests of the public. They're paying attention to the interests of corporate elites and status quo.
And so that's why I support Extinction Rebellion, because of that. Because they're pushing the government to tell the truth.
That's right. So they've gone straight for the weak point. Okay. Mm-hmm. So they could have gone to the corporate elites and says, we want you to change, but they're not going to do that, because they're not beholden to the public. They're beholden to shareholders, but the governments are beholden to the public. And so the Extinction Rebellion is putting the pressure on the governments. And what they do and this is the theory behind it, is the arrests is that when the government starts to arrest the public, it sharpens it puts the government as the bad guy. Okay.
Right, and it makes like the friends and families more engaged in the process.
That's right. So when mum sees the son getting carted away by the police, she goes, hell, this thing's serious after all. What's he even talking about? So she starts talking about it.
Right.
Starts conversations. And the reason why they are just disturbing the public is because if you don't disturb the public, you're probably not going to get arrested. So,
Right. So you have to do a little bit, like just enough. Just enough. They don't want to, be violent or anything, but they just want to do enough to get arrested. Just
well, yeah,
just
and
such-
so the balance that they've got to find. There was an interview with one of the female. I'm afraid I can't remember her name, but there was an interview with her on Good Morning Britain yesterday. Okay, so Good Morning Britain is one of those really highly popular morning TV shows.
Mhm.
Gail, her name is, they brought her in. There was three journalists, and they brought her in, and this retired police inspector, who's like, it was actually quite a funny character. He said, "Oh, I think it's really, people have got the right to protest." He says, "But just don't break the law, because if you want to have a social movement, you need to keep the public on side. And if you're going to annoy all these people by blocking the traffic, you're going to lose the public support." They've got to walk a very delicate line to get that right, because they could just basically have the public go, "That Extinction Rebellion, what a bunch of wankers." Okay. But the point is that they've got to get in the public space in order to let the public know that there's something worth protesting about.
Yeah, you got to obstruct something. I'm sorry, but I was really disappointed in the Melbourne, Australia move. Their little. I watched their things, and they're all being so nice. So they made people like sit through an extra cycle of a traffic signal, and that's really supposed to disrupt things. Like,
no, well,
it was great the police were helping them and all, but yeah.
The Extinction Rebellion is not as mature in this country as it is in the UK, and it was founded in the UK, and it was founded. Their headquarters are in London.
I think DC, the DC one in the United States, actually did a better job than Melbourne, Australia. But Australia is going through so many issues right now with climate change. Like, that's one of the most affected countries as far as climate change. So
this summer has been pretty hellacious.
Why aren't they all over it? What the hell is going on? Why can't they see what's going on right in front of their eyes?
Well, part of it is because this Liberal government that we've had in Australia, the term liberal, it has the opposite meaning in America. So in America, liberals are generally left of centre, sort of, socialistic. In Australian politics, liberal refers to people who are the Conservative Party, right?
Well, they're conservative here too, the Liberal Party.
So we've had this government in for 6 years, and they base blanket denial of climate change. They do everything they can to interfere with it and keep the fossil fuel industry going strong. So we've got an election.
What are they saying it is, though? How are they explaining?
They say that they recognize that it's a problem and that we are meeting our Paris targets, which they are not. So, basically, the Paris Agreement was so.
Is there one country that is meeting the target? One? Is there one?
Costa Rica, there's a couple of countries, small countries, which are doing amazing things. Like I'm saying, is that because the transition to the clean energy is actually already underway. We've got like huge solar farms being built all over Australia right now. So that's already underway. So if they actually just stopped running interference, we'd probably meet the Paris targets just by the natural course of economic development and transition because of better technology. But because they are running interference, like for example, under the previous government, the Labor government, they introduced a carbon price. Well, that got scrapped. They just took the carbon price away. So all of a sudden, there's no that pricing signal that made a distinction between fossil fuels and renewables. That got taken away. And so we've got an election coming up on the 18th of May, and it's a good chance that we'll get the Labor Party back in. And the Labor Party has got its head screwed on with renewables, and they are planning to put in place mechanisms to allow 50% renewables by 2030. Can you excuse me?
No, you're
Sorry,
fine.
that's the wine. Sorry.
Okay, now it's the wine. Okay, guys, while he's away, I'm just going to say, while he's away, poor guy, because he'll come back and I'm not trashing it. I'm just saying, I don't know what renewables mean. renewable could mean plants, like you're growing like corn for ethanol fuel and all that. But is that really renewable? Yay! That's awesome.
Well,
I am so jealous.
I thought he was just going to get a
I could
bottle
get
of
wine
wine.
delivery here.
Wow.
Not going to happen. I mean, I was excited to see wine in the convenience store in Wyoming because you don't see that here in Utah. But okay, so I was just talking to the people. We have to take comments in like 2 minutes.
Okay.
So
I don't think I've got any more deliveries today. So
okay, that's great. But no, but my concern with renewables, and I'm going to put quotes on that, is like corn and all that. It takes water, it takes fossil fuel and everything to produce it. Solar power. I mean, there was a story about how there was little baby kids like searching for cobalt to make the solar panels. I'm not sure exactly how renewables are and how much energy it makes to, or it takes to make them, and if we have enough for how many people we have on this planet. You already know how I feel about that. So
let me just say something about the fuels that you're talking about. Okay, I've just sent a link to a page, Refuel. So this is back in 2007. I set up a company in Townsville with another guy called Refuel Biodiesel, and we were bringing biodiesel from Brisbane up to Townsville, which is about 1,200 kilometers, in big double tankers, and we were retailing biodiesel, straight biodiesel, to the public. So I know a lot about that industry. Now, biodiesel is a diesel fuel made from vegetable oil, so it's called a biofuel. What you're referring to is ethanol made from corn, which is another biofuel. So ethanol basically is a petrol replacement, and biodiesel is a diesel replacement. Now, the fuel, the biodiesel that we were bringing in was made predominantly from canola, which is an oil crop, and coconut oil and used cooking oil, so cooking oil out of fish and chip shops. Now, what I learned from that experience with Refuel Biodiesel was that biodiesel is a far superior fuel to petroleum diesel. Okay, so one thing that biodiesel does is it cleans the fuel system. So it's just a better fuel overall. So the vehicles were getting better fuel economy using biodiesel than they were out of regular diesel. But the trouble is, you don't want to be making your biofuels out of food crops, because of the issues that you're addressing. Is that you've got to use a lot of land, you've got to use a lot of fuel to drive
a lot of
water, you've got to use nutrient fertilizer, you've got all of those problems. And so there's a new generation of biofuels, which are called algae biofuels. And algae biofuels are basically where you grow algae, like the water plant. And if you grow the right type of algae, you can grow it very, very fast in very high volumes using very small.
Could you utilize? I'm sorry. Could you utilize the algae blooms that we already are developing in, like, there's Florida that has the red tide, and we have Utah Lake with an algae bloom. We have Jordan River with an algae bloom. Like, they're all over.
So what makes algae biofuels work is the lipids, which is basically the oils and fats that grow inside the cells. So the algae and there's hundreds of thousands of types of algae. So the algae that grows in those algae blooms has probably got some lipids in it, but whether it's got enough to justify the processing of it that you could then actually produce the fuel, I don't know. So when they grow, so one of the there was an algae biofuel company up in Townsville years ago, and they tied in with the James Cook University, and they had a research division there, because James Cook University has a lot of marine biology work, and so they was looking at all of these many different strains of naturally occurring algae to figure out which were the best ones to actually cultivate in order to make these fuels. So that's the pathway. So the thing about algae biofuels is that there is a pathway to replacing petroleum oil, because if you see what comes out of an algae biofuel farm, it's basically like green crude oil. In fact, they call it green crude. And it's got some of, again, depending on the types of strains that you're using, you can have all of these different complicated, complex molecules in there, just like you've got in petroleum oil. So the question is then whether you can produce that fuel in a manner which has got a low environmental footprint. And the answer to that is you can produce that fuel in a manner that's got a low environmental footprint, even at the state of the technology where it is right now. But the reason why these companies, why we aren't seeing that stuff produced, is because of the fact that the system is railed towards keeping petroleum industry alive, and at every opportunity governments do what they can to prevent the growth of these new technologies. If the government simply got out the way, these transitions would happen already. So there's nothing that we can't replace with renewables, and as time progresses and technology advances, we end up with renewables which are more sustainable.
Okay. I mean, I hope so. I'm not very optimistic. I'm sorry. I'm just not a very optimistic person when it comes to like what's going on right now. And I'd really rather not see fast food places, let alone using the vegetable oil that they have left over for that. I think we need to start considering learning way more sustainably than we are right now. Um, and not have places like fast food places. Like people need to start growing their own food. And I know that's really complicated for some people to even fathom. I rarely ever eat out, honestly. But I think that is really horrible for our environment, and shipping in stuff from out of state, shipping in anything really. We should be living locally.
Yeah, and these are all parts of the trends. But at the end of the day, not everybody wants to grow their own food. I don't want to grow my own food.
No, but people can. That, like, you don't have to do it yourself, but if you had someone in your personal community that was doing it.
Yeah, and look, one of the big issues of growing your own food, or that concept that you're talking about, is this idea of food miles, where the distance that food is carted around the planet is crazy. You know, you got situations where you get something grown here is shipped to the other side of the planet where it is processed, and then it's shipped back to the other side of the planet where it finally goes into a retail. And you've got situations where you can go into a shopping center and you're finding products on the shopping center that have actually traveled 12,000 kilometers. I mean, that works in a market economy, but it doesn't make any sense. And all of that distance relates to carbon emissions because you're getting your energy. Yeah.
Shipping food is okay. We got questions going on. We only have 10 minutes left. Gazar asks, how much space for biofuel is at expense of food crops?
Well, so the idea is that you don't grow the biofuels in places where you grow food crops, and so you try and grow the algae biofuels in places which have got, degraded land, desert land. Australia's got
deserts are still ecosystems.
No,
I will fight to my death for the desert land that has beautiful animals that live here. Even the rattlesnake that bit me is a wonderful animal that lives here.
No, I agree completely, and I don't mean to write off deserts in that regard. But what I'm saying is that you don't need to compete with food crops in order to grow the algae biofuels. I've got an associate in Australia who's a professor who's got a model that basically, if you show him your climate of your region, he will tell you what is the most cost-effective way to produce algae biofuels. And I was chatting with him. He says that he can replace all of Australia's liquid fuels, so that's petrol, diesel, aviation, gasoline, gas, I think in 125 by 125 square kilometre area, which is about the size of a small cattle farm in Australia. To give you an idea of what's possible if you went down that path, and that's the path that we have to go down. So there's going to be.
We need to figure out something, and I'm hoping we can. But no one is doing anything at this point.
It's not because the technology isn't available. It's because the political system is geared towards keeping petroleum industry alive, rather than euthanizing it, which is the only sensible thing to do.
Yeah, and it's no wonder people like me get so pessimistic, because they're not doing anything, and no one is even talking about the issues. and especially the population issues. You know how we've already had that discussion. We can't keep growing as and expect to survive as a species if we keep growing. I mean, either people are going to regulate their own population or nature will do it for us. It's like one way or another.
Yeah,
It's
no,
it,
absolutely.
it I mean,
Um,
and I'm not advocating for killing anybody, just so you know. And I love babies. I love babies so much. I just don't want to see them suffer, and I'm afraid there's
and
going to
look,
be a lot of suffering.
it's right to be depressed about the inaction of government. Okay, but what you don't have to be depressed about is the available technology today, because that's amazing and it's here already. The incredible opportunities of technology going forward, just to keep working on the stuff that we've already got to make it cheaper and more environmentally benign. And you don't have to worry about there being an absence of money on the planet, because there is trillions of dollars gifted to the
I'm
fossil
not
fuel.
worried about the money. I mean, I'm aware of MMT and all
Yeah,
that. It's like money's not an issue.
yeah.
It,
So what I'm
it's
saying is that the bit that's missing is the governments are not acting in the interests of the
right.
okay,
They
so they're
don't
simply not
care
fulfilling
to,
their job, right? They're not fit for task.
and they
So
won't. And people are going to keep having babies, thinking that's going to solve the problem, and it's only going to make it worse. And there's
yeah, and
already people starving. There's people we can't feed right now on the planet.
mm,
So having more children is not going to help the situation, especially with our deteriorating educational system. We had this, I don't know if you've seen this moron we have, is actually one of our state freaking uh, stupid idiots. Mike Lee, he went and did the presentation to the Congress about how we should be having more babies to solve
oh,
climate
yeah,
problems. Did you see him? He's an
yeah. Look,
idiot.
that there's this incredible infantilism in some of these political leaders that you just think these people are babies themselves. You know, I was watching who was it Kerry was in some climate committee, and this imbecile that was asking him questions, and Kerry was saying, you know, this is not a serious conversation. You're making this. You're saying stupid things. You're not talking like an intelligent, educated adult, and that's sort of part of how the governments get away with it. They just act like imbeciles, and everyone just
Mhm.
takes that for granted, as though that's the imbecilic statement is actually the truth of the matter. Uh,
Right.
uh, and maybe it's just because we elect people who are stupid, or maybe
Well,
it's
I know
because
Utah does. Utah does for sure. I don't know what the hell is. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with people here. They elect the most moronic people that don't give a crap about the planet. They call anyone who cares about the environment an environmental terrorist. I'm
yeah,
an environmental terrorist here,
yeah,
and I had to change my Facebook and my Twitter account because I was getting personal attacks
right,
because of my positions on the environment. And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
ah
Well, you do live in America, which is different from Australia. Uh, yeah,
how is that different? Do you guys like have an easier time with stuff like that?
I don't know, because I haven't been to America, so I've got to clarify that. So but just like, for example, I think that if, like I'll give you an example. If you were to do in America what the Extinction Rebellion is doing in London, you would have what would from the outside appear to be a military force descend upon you in no time at all. They'd come in with armored trucks, black bodysuits, visors,
Yeah. And
semi-automatic assault rifles. So
at
you've
the
got to,
very least, rubber bullets, some
yeah,
tear gas,
yeah,
water cannons. They had a. Did you see the one in DC? Um, but that's like in DC where everybody is under a microscope in DC. So uh, that one didn't turn out too bad. I mean, they were pretty decent. Um, but there wasn't enough people. There just wasn't enough people to keep it going. But okay, we have questions and stuff, and I got to get some shout outs. We're kind
of got enough water. So if you think about there's two broad ways of making the biofuels. One's in an open, basically big open trenches. And then the other way is where you actually enclose enclose it. So it's called a photobioreactor. In the photobioreactors, you've got a lot of control over water. So if you get in the open ponds, you get evaporation, which is an issue because you'll lose your water. But in the enclosed ones, then basically you can control that. And what you do is you grow the algae in it, and then you separate the algae from the water so you can keep reusing the water. So there are very water efficient ways of growing the algae biofuels. That's
okay. So you answering that question that was just up there.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Bio's here. Thanks for coming, Bio. Bio says Julian Assange will be quit jumping. Will be waterboarded and executed headshot style, probably. I hope not.
I don't know about that, but he will probably be in solitary confinement for a long time.
Yeah, I don't even want to think about it. Hi, Don Hooligan. I haven't seen you for a while. Thanks for coming. I don't know what he said. Rosicrucians. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce that. Oz, how do you say that word? Rosicrucians are the good guys. I don't know what that is. Okay. Do you know what that is? Maybe
a religious order, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Rosicarians or
Rosicarians.
No, Rosicrucians. You were closer than I am, but yeah.
I have no idea. They're the good guys, really? Okay. Letter F key is erratic on my keyboard. Okay, I don't know. Gazar. You say some really random stuff. Belehea 56, they need to kidnap Donald Jr. and do a prisoner swap for Assange on the Vatican Bridge. Sure, I would be okay with that. What about you? Do you think you'd be okay with that? I mean, you're not in the U.S., so, but come on, Don Jr., he can go. We can do without him.
I don't know. I don't know if that would work.
It's just a joke, I promise.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's pretty funny. Yeah.
Okay. Going south. Hi, Torstein. There's a lot of Islam apologists also in France that enjoyed this fire a lot. I guess they're talking about that fire at the
Notre Dame.
Thanks, Sauce.
Actually, that's interesting. It's interesting because that fire interrupted the news cycle. That was a really, really, I scan the news in the morning and you see what's important. You
think that was purposeful? Like,
no, I don't. I think the place was under construction and there was just an accident. And because it's a big old building and it was covered in, surrounded by scaffolding and probably sheets, all sorts of stuff. I think it was just an accident. But the point is, it was a big news story, which is to say that the news industry decided that that's what they wanted you to think about today, and they didn't want you to think about the Extinction Rebellion
or Julian
or Bernie.
Or Bernie or Tulsi.
Yep.
So I've done quite a lot of work with the media back when I was doing consulting work in Townsville, and I was quite successful in getting news stories. I'd write the press releases and then host the events, and I do this for my clients as well as doing it for my own projects. And I came to think of the media as being like an ice tray. You know how you get an ice tray, you put the water in to make the ice cubes, and that the media has basically got 12 stories that it needs to fill today. And they basically look to see what's out in the landscape of stories, what the press releases are and what different events are going on. And then they basically choose the 12 stories that they think is going to be of most interest to the public, that's going to get people to watch their show. And so if your story is really important, but maybe a less important story, but one that's a little bit more sort of popular, like, I don't know, a wardrobe malfunction of a famous movie star, for example, is going to blitz, the scientific finding that the world's going to end in 5 days. That's just, nobody's going to know about it. And so part of that schema is to make sure that your stories are really engaging and compelling to help them get higher up that list. Now,
Right.
so when you do the Extinction Rebellion and shut down London as the first day of the beginnings of a global revolution for sustainability, unfortunately, the burning down of Notre Dame just happens to be significantly more important in the minds of the media in the way that they rank things.
And isn't that sad? I mean, it's just a building. And we're talking about the planet, and we're talking about the media that keeps the government accountable. Those are two big stories that should not be outweighed by a burning building. I'm sorry.
And the other thing as well is that this is what I learned as well doing my work with media, is that the media want this thing called vision, okay, which is where they want to film something, but they want action vision. All right, so there's this concept called action vision, and action vision doesn't mean action per se. It just means that it's kind of like moving. And so, for example, if I was doing media for my biofuels, then I could stand next to the truck and tell my story about the biofuels. But what the cameraman or the journalist is going to want to do is to have the truck moving in the background, because that's more action vision. And there is nothing more action vision than a big building going up on fire.
That's yeah, absolutely. Okay, Guy, we are really running over time, and I have to get some call outs to my people because, you know, so just hold on 1 second. And I will give you the last word for sure. And of course, I'll have you on again. You know, I will.
Excellent. Good.
So, for one thing, I got to say hi to Jeremy Chase because he hasn't been here forever. What the hell's happened to you, man? Thanks for coming, though, today. That's awesome to see you in the chat today. Does your audience believe the regular people should be eradicated so the wealthy can continue all the continue all the resources? No. Eat the rich. Sorry.
You've got to cook them properly because they're quite tough.
Oh yeah, you got to cook them right. I mean, there's one of my people, Trent Black. He has a cookbook for the rich. Yeah, he has a really great cookbook.
And of course, the Peter Greenaway movie, The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover, in which anyway, there's a cannibalistic situation in that story. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna end up that way eventually. I mean, when there's nothing. Okay, Don Hilligan, Christians have brutally massacred a lot of Muslims over the years. Yes, they have. I'm sorry, I'm not a religious person. I mean, if religion was what you wanted religion to be, right? I mean, I've mentioned this in several of my videos, not just the one that I did with you last time. It's, you know, if people worship nature as much as they worship this sky man, I mean, they would really, really be taking better care of our planet, and we wouldn't be in the situation we're in right now. So so that's really hard. Okay, I gotta continue giving shout outs. I could talk forever, honestly. I just have to, you know, control it a little bit because poor Oz has a life too, and he doesn't really.
I'm good tonight, believe me. You guys are owed a few more minutes because we had a rocky start.
We did have a rocky start, but I do have to give all the shout outs to everybody. Okay, Torstein, it was a military effort. I don't know, they're talking amongst each other. Okay, you guys, if you want me to say anything, just quickly put a C for a comment and put a Q for a question, and let's go. But I'm gonna say hello to everybody. Hi, Kent Dill. Thank you for coming. I love Kent Dill. We have a lot of good conversations. Rich man's recipe, Jeremy's Jesus. Yep. Let's see. Torsten. What was that?
It wasn't me.
Sorry. I just checked. I just pressed the button. I think it made a noise.
I think so. It's like, did I get an echo or something? That's weird. Hi, Bio. Eat the Bio says eat the rich like a Kobe beef. Yeah. I have the best people. I love.
That's a good point, actually. I mean, if the power elite who are sitting here holding back the transition to a sustainable economy knew that there were people talking about how they should cook them.
I know, right? I think we should do that a lot more. We should totally. Yeah. There should be actually a book published on how to cook the rich.
Well, I got this little recipe where I mix maple syrup with sweet soy sauce, and then you whip that with oil until it goes into a nice sort of amalgam, and that is just a delicious flavoring. So that would be my recommendation.
Yummy.
Just marinate them in that for a little while, and then fry it lightly on a low gas flame.
Oh, low on the grill. It has to be grilled, like with maybe a little bit of smoky flavor, mesquite or something like that. That sounds good. Okay, Torstein, going south. Guy got my wine for the Easter today as well.
Oh, good. Excellent.
Nice. Why can't I get wine delivered to me? That's not fair. This is not fair. In this stupid state. Oh, Trev B5 is here. He says, your God is dead and no one cares. There is a hell. I'll see you there. Oh, shoot. That's awesome. I have the most cool people. That is, wow. I love all my people here. Let's see. I wish I could pronounce
Valhalla.
Valhalla 56. I'm a vegan, so I'll just have to settle for killing them. Well, they make good compost too.
Yeah, we can share the tasks around. I mean, you wouldn't want to have to do the whole work yourself.
Right, yeah.
Processing and cooking them.
Oh my gosh, is there anyone I didn't say hello to? Last time I missed so many people. Okay, Jeremy Jesus, population control is a man's recipe. I think women have a great deal to do with that recipe as well.
Kent Deal has a great comment there.
Where is it? Oh, where? Put it up.
It hasn't come up here yet. I'll put it up.
Oh, the French invented the guillotine. Perhaps we should see that as a challenge.
I love that.
Awesome, Kent. Oh my God, I had the best people. We're crazy here, though, right, Guy? You got to chill here. You can't be too serious.
No. Look, it's good. You got to have conversations about serious things in a lighthearted way. Otherwise, you go a little bit crazy.
Oh, absolutely. This is my sanity right here. All these great people and all that. Oh, I haven't seen Peter Burks here before. Thank you for coming. I don't remember seeing you here, but thank you. Peter Berg says we'll have to catch up over a beer next time you're in town, guys. So he must be one of your friends.
Yeah. So who's this? Sorry.
Peter Bergs?
I don't know Peter, but I do drink beer.
Okay, so do I.
Yeah.
But he wants to have a beer with you, apparently.
Yeah, so, great.
I mean,
great.
Who isn't up for a beer, right?
Who's not up for a beer? Exactly.
As long as someone's buying, I mean.
As long as we can do big talk, I'm not so good with small talk. I like.
I know, me either. I don't want to talk about the weather. Come on, let's talk about something important.
Yeah.
Okay, put that comment back up, Oz, because I missed it.
Which comment?
The comment you just had up there.
Oh, rope is cheaper than steel. Was it?
Oh, that was awesome. Rope is cheaper than steel.
Yeah.
I don't know if people can hear you, so.
No, they can't.
Okay, so yeah. Sorry, guys. I'm talking to this ghost. His name is Oz behind the curtain. He's saying some. Who said that, Oz?
That was Don Hooligan.
Oh, Don Hooligan said that. Rope is cheaper than steel. Yeah, it is, and it takes less energy to make too.
And look, rope, if it's made of natural fibers, is actually a carbon sink. Yeah,
you can do it out of hemp. You can make
carbon out of the atmosphere and store it in the rope until you need it to. Whatever purpose.
That works for me.
Yeah.
Okay, Jeremy, people all over your world are becoming discontent and the rich are completely out of touch. This has repeated throughout history. Yeah, I mean, every giant world order has crashed, like the fall of Rome and Egypt and everything. We're coming. I mean, I'm hoping for the collapse of our oligarchy and our whatever over the collapse of our planet. I'm hoping that happens first.
Yeah,
Personally,
something's going on, and there's a connect that we've got. What I think is different today than in the past is that it's easy for people to share ideas now, as per what we're doing through these technologies, and and rebellions and shifting power is well understood. I mean, the historians understand it in very fine detail, which is how you can have someone like Roger Hallam go and study it to figure out what is the fastest and most painless way to actually bring it about, hence the Extinction Rebellion. So, what's really exciting about the Extinction Rebellion is it's actually started, and what we're seeing is the opening acts of something which, in the first instance, is going to go on over a couple of weeks, and I'm talking specifically about London, which is the capital of the rebellion.
It's so wonderful watching those. Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and everyone's just turning up, and they bought a whole bunch of people bought trees with them with
I know
oil in it, and they planted Waterloo Bridge, and in Oxford's Piccadilly Circus, I think they bought a boat. They put a sailing boat in, a bright pink sailing boat.
Fabulous.
Tell the truth right on the side of it, and I think they've got their technical setup in there. That's where they've got their soundboards and stuff, and there's all these people and they're partying, and I was watching a woman that got up in the morning the other day. She did a live stream on Facebook, and there's all of these tents that have taken over this park, and I actually recognize this park because I went through this park when I was in London in 2011. It's got this really distinctive statue of a horse's head where the head is actually pointed down. And this place is just a sea of little tents with all of these people camping out in the middle of the city.
Is that great?
Trying to change the government, trying to get the government to tell the truth.
It made me want to do it. Watching it today, it made me want to screw my job, but I have all these animals to take care of. If I did that, I wouldn't be able to feed them, and I have old senior dogs and stuff. By the way, thank you, Don Hilligan, for telling people to hit the like button. Yeah, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and stuff, because you know.
And Peter Bergs, I see. I met Peter Berg at the school strike a few weeks ago. Hi, Peter.
Oh, that's the one that wanted to have a beer with you.
Yeah. I remember now, of course.
Okay, all right. So you have to have a beer with Peter Berg if you ever have a chance. Damn my phone. Okay, there you go. So. He's letting you know. Oh my gosh, people are so nice. I love these people. Humans here. Hi, human.
Jeremy Chase has a question there, or a comment.
Do you believe the yellow vests will push these douchebags back into Versailles?
Well, so whether do I believe that the yellow vest protests will be effective in changing the way that the elites operate in France? I don't know, but that thing's been going on for 14 weeks now, 13 weeks.
I know. I hope they keep it going. If they go long enough, I might be with them. So,
and then the burning of the Notre Dame. I was talking to the guys on the Reality Report about this, about how when you get these highly charged situations, then things like a burning of a significant building could become symbolic of something. So the burning of that building, which I don't believe was deliberate, was accidental, could become something of a rallying cry, or because that building burned in the very city where all of the riots have been going on for the last 15 weeks. So anyway, so there's interesting things going on in the world, and it's like the can of the worms is open now. If they arrested the leaders of the Extinction Rebellion, the rebellion is going to continue, and it's just going to go on and on, because they've outlined the model. The model has been described now. And they've got the branding, and
yeah, and I hope they keep going and going and going. And I think there will be people replacing those ones they're arresting, because they've been so inspirational. And
Well,
you know.
they're planning on being there for 2 weeks. But
Mhm.
what Hallam says in his videos is that if you can keep the pressure up, and every time they get the arrests, people come in to take their place, it
Mhm.
only takes 5 to 10 days to actually on it. You know, in the historical evidence, 5 to 10 days you can force the hand of the regime. They'll either
Right.
collapse or they'll give in to your demands, because you can't have your capital cities locked up. That's where all the
No.
elite are about their business. That's where the commerce goes on. It the shockwaves will go out through the entire country and
I
ultimately
just
throughout the whole world because of Britain being a financial capital.
right. I just wish they would get a little bit more serious in the US. Like, why don't we have any? I mean, DC was pretty decent, and they had one in New York, but I haven't. I've been looking for the New York one that was supposed to happen this week, and I haven't seen it yet. Um, so I don't know. I mean, what's going on in the US? Are they afraid? Because they
Well,
have been really vicious to protesters here, really
yeah,
vicious.
but remember also that like I say, that London is the capital of the revolution. That's where it started. They've been planning it for a lot longer, and they
Mhm.
did their dummy run back in December. The beginning of December, they took I think Waterloo Bridge with 6,000 people. So by in December last year, they already had enough support to bring 6,000 people onto the streets. So they've been planning it and working on it for longer, which is why it is more advanced, and which is why I'm focusing my interest or my attention on London, and whatever happens everywhere else is secondary, because London is where the rebellion will really live or die. If it falls over
Mm.
there, then there's less likely that the model will be successful under that brand in other countries. But if it's successful there, then that will inspire everybody who's watching it to actually get more involved. Now there is Extinction Rebellion going on in Brisbane. I've not been involved with them yet, but I don't think they're anywhere near the point of actually seizing the city to force the hand of the government, which is
Yeah,
ultimately.
it's kind of like the Melbourne one because the Melbourne one was pathetic. I,
Well, remember,
not that I give them kudos for doing what they're doing because they did shut down a street for 5 minutes, but it was
but
5 minutes.
it takes time and effort, and you've got to find the people, you've got to find the right people, you've got to get the organization. There's a lot of effort involved in actually, um, what the planning, to actually pull it off effectively, which is to seize the capitals and then change the government, takes a tremendous amount of planning. And so what I'm seeing is I'm not going to criticize what happened in Melbourne. I just see that as the early stages of the development of their movement.
No, I'm very proud of them. I mean, I give them all the credit in the world for what they're doing. I want to see more like what's going on in London. I want it to get like that everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's coming because London's program began on what, the 15th of April, but who knows? There might be one in Berlin that starts on the 26th of September. So the point is that it's not just the 2 weeks; it's going to go on and on and on and on.
And it
And the
should,
model,
yes.
and the model is that if it's successful somewhere, then it could potentially spread across the whole planet. So maybe by the time by the time the year is out, we'll actually be on our way to transition. Maybe.
Let's hope so. Okay, let's get through some more comments. Oh my gosh, I could talk to you all night. You know that, right?
Well, I've got all night, so I can stay on
I
here.
do too, but well, I don't really because I have to I have to work, and I I just got back from Wyoming. It was a very long drive, and I have lots of stuff to do for work before I go to bed. So anyway, but I will have you on again. I promise.
Oh, good, good.
Oh, Roger Hanks, you're a new person. Thanks for coming. I always appreciate new people that show up in the chat. He said, "Hi, so what is this I'm hearing about the planet going away in less than 10 years?" Okay, I don't think I'll let you answer this too, Guy, but I just don't think that the timeline is definite. Um, we should be doing something like right now to make sure.
Yeah,
I mean,
we
we
should have
should have done 20 years ago, like
well, yeah.
30
So
years ago.
1980 is a good time. In 1980 was when James Hansen talked to Congress about climate change, And also around about 1979 is when the World Meteorological Organization actually acknowledged climate change as a threat to humanity. So that was when climate change came onto the sort of onto the political agenda, if you like. If we'd taken expedient action then, we wouldn't be in this mess now. But where we are now, we're actually. I did an interview the other day with Professor Will Steffen, who's one of the scientists behind planetary boundaries and the Anthropocene work, and he's got a paper called Planetary Transitions in the Anthropocene. And what they're saying is that somewhere between 1 and 2 degrees Celsius above baseline, there are a series of climate tipping points that could basically send us into a rerun of the Permian extinction, going into the hothouse, which would annihilate most of life on Earth. So we're already in the danger zone.
And it could happen any minute. I mean, if we go to the Blue Ocean event, it could happen. I mean, that may happen this year, this summer, going into the Blue Ocean event.
That's one of the tipping points. The other is the, for example, the thermohaline circulation slowdown. Another is the
methane bomb, the
Amazon rainforest becoming a carbon sink. And now that we've got that crazy planet eater Bolsonaro in charge, that's exactly what he's planning. So we're in dire straits. We're in really, really dire straits, and there's no time to muck around, which is why what we need to do is to occupy the capitals until we change the governments or change the government's behaviour. And so what's happening in Brisbane now, the small efforts where they're putting banners over the freeways, I see that as the beginnings of the movement, as the growing, the learning to walk. Because you've got to figure out how to get people, how to make a banner, how to deploy a banner. You've got to figure out what the laws are. You've got to figure out what's the what people are prepared to do, whether they're prepared to get arrested, and what they're prepared to get arrested for. There's lots and lots of planning and spreadsheets and all of the detail. And you've got to find the people, and they've got to be resourced. And so what's happening in London is the capital of the rebellion. But it is being replicated around the world, but around the world is not as advanced as they are.
Right. Do you want to handle this question, Guy?
Yeah. Are there any preventative plans to help the bats and other wildlife in Australia with summer heat? Yeah. No. I heard a story about a guy who was because when the heat wave came through and killed off the bats literally fell dead out of the trees because they hang upside down in the trees and roost. And when they die, they just fall out. And so there's all these dead bats. And after a couple of days in the heat, the bats basically started exploding, having this public health issue. And so I don't think there's any plans to help the bats, really. There is actually a lot of people actually keep orphan bats as pets. I had a friend of mine who used to have one. He used to walk around. He'd have the little thing, have its little claws, he'd have it hanging off his shirt like a brooch or a pendant. And they're really beautiful. The fruit bats, they're like dogs. They look like dogs, and they're really friendly. So they allow you to tickle them and play with them, and you feed them little pieces of fruit. They're pretty amazing. But and look, they're vulnerable to climate change, and that's why it's like another reason that we've got to fix this thing. And the way we fix it is we force the hands of governments to then regulate the corporations. But of course, that's all tied in with the matrix of the political and economic elites, which are all interconnected around the world, which is again why this rebellion has to be an international rebellion. There's no point just UK getting it right. It's got to be everywhere else,
Right. Yeah. I mean, people don't understand how, every little animal, every little species, as unimportant as they seem, are very, very important. Bats. And today I was traveling back from Wyoming, and I stopped at this rest area, and there was all these little, they call them pot guts here, but they're the Utah ground squirrel, is the other name, or people around here just call them target practice. They're assholes, but they're the sweetest things. They're so friendly. I'm videotaping them, and they're coming up closer and closer to me. They're like 3-4 feet away from me, and they're so beautiful, and they do have a purpose. They aerate the ground just like earthworms and all that. They dig up the ground, and every little thing has a purpose. But like the groundhogs and all that, they're becoming extinct because of what people are doing. Not the groundhog, the prairie dogs. The prairie dogs.
Yeah.
Because people don't see the purpose in them. Just because people don't see the purpose doesn't mean they have no purpose. It's like wasps, even wasps, like horrible wasps. They're terrible, but they're pollinators as well. And they also they're kind of like the birds that clean up carcasses. I mean, they're like that too. They eat meat, so they will clean up carcasses. So
Yeah, and
there's a
this is
purpose
really
for them
important.
too.
So in my conversation with Will Steffen the other day in the planetary boundaries model, there are 9 key processes that take place on Earth that allow the Earth to maintain the current conditions, the Holocene-like state, he calls it. And there's, out of those 9, 2 are core, one of which is climate change, but the other one is called biosphere integrity. And biosphere integrity has got 2 elements, one of which is genetic diversity and functional diversity. And so what they're basically saying is that if you want to keep the planet in a condition that the human civilization has grown up in, then we need to maintain the integrity of the biosphere, which means that we can't keep letting these animals go extinct.
Right.
So
but there's 200 going extinct every single day.
That's right. And we often think, mainly when we think about extinctions, we think mainly about mammals because we can sort of relate to them, and particularly big mammals like elephants and rhinos and zebras. But a lot of what's going extinct, for example, freshwater fish have taken a really big hit.
And plants and plankton and, like really important.
And so it's all the little stuff as well. And this, again, is part of what we've got to transition away from, is that we've toxified the whole planet, not only directly by spraying pesticides around the place. I was in a Bunnings the other day, which is a bit like a Home Depot over in America. We've got a big chain called Bunnings, a hardware store. And I was standing and looking down this long, long row of cans of chemicals and pesticides and herbicides. It was just this unbelievable array of ways of killing living things. And so, if you look at the emissions that are coming out of the tailpipes of motor vehicles, the brake pad linings, the stuff coming off the tire treads. And so in the planetary boundaries model, one of the 9 processes is called novel entities. And novel entities basically is stuff produced by humans that isn't produced by nature. And Will Steffen was saying that there is just a never-ending list of new novel entities coming into the environment that nature doesn't know how to deal with. And some of these pesticides, the neonicotinoid pesticides, which are really enduring, which are responsible for killing off the bees, because they bring this stuff back into the hive.
Yeah, and the systemic ones, the ones that go through the root system and up there, those also are very, very culpable.
It's inside the plant. So part of this transition is not just about getting rid of the fossil fuels, it's about getting rid of all of the things that are killing the planet and having a really honest and open conversation. But because our governments don't act on behalf of the public, they act on behalf of the status quo, then it's really difficult to get any change, which is why we need to have the global Extinction Rebellion.
Right. And we do, yeah. I'm a big supporter of that. And I'm really happy that you came on to talk about that. It's very, very important.
I've been doing climate change. I've been doing climate change for 19 years. And this is the only, Extinction Rebellion is the only thing that I have seen that has got the chance to actually fix the problem. It's the biggest thing that I've ever seen. So
telling the truth will go a long ways, because until people admit what the problem is and see what the problem is, there's not going to be anything happening to solve it. And that's my biggest pessimistic part, is like no one is admitting there is a problem. So that makes it really difficult to solve if you're not even admitting there's a problem.
Absolutely.
That's my biggest reason why I have no faith in anything. When I see people starting to admit to, and politicians start to admit that there is an actual problem and how serious it is, then maybe I'll have a little hope. But until then, no, I have no hope. Sorry.
Well, and look, when they do start telling the truth, people are going to freak out, because the scale of what's coming down the pipeline.
It's already happening. Look what's happening in the Midwest here in the U.S. Over 1 million cows. I thought it was bad in Australia when all those cows died. Over 1 million cows died.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
here. So it's
And
even
so,
worse.
even when we do get this transition underway and really focus on it and get big international agencies helping to coordinate it and moving trillions of dollars into investments of renewables and alternatives, and yeah, even when we start that, we've still got decades of increasing climate change coming down the pipe because of the lag, because there's this 20-year
yeah,
lag
there's already like what 2, 3, 4 degrees already in.
baked in, exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going past 2 degrees almost certainly, unless
And
in
then you get the
transition.
extreme temperatures, the extreme weather events are going to happen.
Yeah,
And it's going to kill a lot of people. It's going to kill a lot of
that's
people.
right. So that's already
It's just a
baked in.
fact.
So it's, the faster we can go in transitioning, but also in drawdown, which is where we suck 1 trillion tons of carbon out of the atmosphere, which is another integral thing that needs to happen in order to avoid the worst.
Yeah, that all the climate scientists are saying that on top of cutting down on emitting, we also have to find a way to pull it out in order to make anything work. And that's what's scary to me when climate scientists are saying that you have to take carbon out of the atmosphere in order to save the planet. I mean, that tells you it's bad. I mean, we're past the point of no return at that point.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's right. And so what's really exciting is if this rebellion can be successful, it's going to transform the world. It's going to transform the world. There's just going to be so many jobs created and new opportunities and new industries. We're going to have to basically pull down the world's energy infrastructure and rebuild it anew. And that's a massive task. It's huge. It's huge.
I know, but I'm just worried we'll utilize way too many fossil fuels trying to do that and make
and this is why it needs to be done in a manner that's got the sort of high level international coordination
we got to think about it though. We can't just go with this Green New Deal. It's like, okay, we're going to bring all these green new jobs and then put tons of fossil fuels into building windmills and building new bridges and putting down new roads and rebuilding all the infrastructure. The green or the original New Deal was destructive to our planet completely. It was probably the most destructive thing to our planet. And I have a really hard time with that. I just do. I don't want to build more stuff. I'm okay if we can replace stuff that we would build anyway, but I don't want to extract any more from the planet. I don't want to keep. I just got through this trip where I watched and looked at everywhere they were extracting minerals and stuff. It was horrific. I mean, if you get a chance, go look at this week or the last 2 days. I've been traveling and seeing all the crap they've been doing. I don't want to see any more land destroyed like that. I can't. It hurts. It hurts my heart to see that. In order to build all this stuff, they're going to have to do that. And how much more can we take? How much more? How much more can be extracted from our planet?
Well, and look, you're raising. It's an excellent point. There's a carbon budget required. You need to allocate a certain amount of fossil fuel emissions in order to produce the renewables. And this is why it's so difficult. So there's got to be a transition that allows for us to generate the energy to produce the renewable energy technologies. And that needs to be balanced by pulling energy out of the network. And you can do that with efficiency by just making energy networks more efficient. Look, there's no doubt about it. It's hugely complicated, and it's on the scale of retooling a nation for a war.
But I don't want to extract another ounce of the biosphere, like pulling more minerals or whatever they need out of the ground, more metals or whatever they need, more raw materials out of the ground. I don't want another ounce to come back out of the ground because those are ecosystems. Those are extremely important ecosystems to the planet, and they're destroying them. It's so hard to look at. It's so hard. I know I'm probably probably a little extreme for a lot of people, but when I see it, I just see I see the animals' homes like ripped up and bombed. I mean, there's blasting areas. They're just blasting these animals' homes, and we depend on the biosphere. We
Yeah.
do. We're a
Yeah.
part of it, and to see them die is like killing a piece of me. It's just
Well,
it's
and
hard.
the way I view it is that we are all part of a single superorganism. So you and I are cells in the body. And
Mhm.
so when you see like what you're describing with these environments being destroyed, you can feel as though it's part of the broader body being destroyed. That's how I feel with it. That's where um, I take it when I see ecosystems being destroyed. I sort of take it personally, like it happened to me. You know, that's how I feel about it.
Right. We I'm
So
sorry. We have to get out of here. Oz is yeah, getting there. I'm sorry, guy. I mean, you know I could talk to you forever. Okay, let me just say goodbye to all my people. I'm sorry if I didn't get to read your comment. Um if there Osama's here. I'm sorry. I didn't see you till now. Osama number 5. Oh, do you have any much okay, I don't know if you guys are just probably talking to each other anyway. Torstein, Roger Hinks, thanks for coming. Gazar, always cool to see you. Jeremy Chase, yeah, you're gonna have to get back with us. I'm sure you can email Guy about he says, what happens if we remove all the carbon from the atmosphere at this point? We can even have an honest discussion on the science. Yeah, there's global dimming, aerosol effect. But we got to go. Guys, I love you all. Ken Deal, Roger Hinks, Zoxalox, hi. Adam Thomas, Human, thank you guys. Human will work for hugs. I'll give you a hug anytime. Um, Zargazar, okay. I think I said hello to everybody. I'm sorry if I didn't get to read your comment. It's getting harder and harder, guys. Quit being so awesome and showing up every time. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Okay, we're gonna get out of here, you guys.
okay,
Hang
okay,
out for just a second, guy, so I
yeah,
can talk
I
to
will.
you. All right, guys, love you all. Thank you for coming. Have a very good night. Yeah, we've been a long time on this show, but it was fun. Thanks,
All
guys.
right, see
Y'all
you.
have
Bye
a good, y'all
bye.
have a good night. Say good night, guy.